Jim, another question I wanted to ask you about something that recently happened in wrestling. This past weekend at the Yokohama Arena in Japan,
Oh, mama, Yokohama.
at an event titled Great Muta Final Bye-Bye,
What?
the Great Muta, in what was billed as his final in-ring appearance as the Great Muta, teamed with Sting and Darby Allin to defeat Marufuji, Hakushi, and Akira. We've had a few emails sent in about this. What are your thoughts on the legacy of the Great Muta? And any thoughts on the Great Muta in general?
Well, but they called it Muta's Final Bye-Bye?
Titled Great Muta Final Bye-Bye.
Anyway, no, Muta, my God, he was huge at that period of time in WCW that, he was only here for a year, but people remember him fondly. And it's like he was, like a lot of the other guys where he was just here, for a long stretch, but it was a short period of time, but he made a ton of difference. And that was one of the one bright spot maybe of new talent and that type of thing that Turner Broadcasting was able to bring the people when they first took over Crockett's company. And I loved watching his matches, and he was a nice guy back in those days. I have not obviously seen him in person in 30 years since he went back to Japan. But I mean, just for the moonsault, a lot of people can't imagine the moonsault being as over and being as talked about as it was when Muta was the only one doing it.
He also did it the best. The fact that we've seen all these guys over the last 30-something years do the moonsault, and his was still the most impactful. Destroyed his knees, but it looked incredible.
And I made mention of and then Vader, the 400-pound man, and Terry Funk, the over 50 man, and then the women, and then the midgets, and then everybody proved they could do a moonsault, and now it ain't worth shit. But Muta, just his speed and his athleticism, and we mentioned this before, the people started taking to him, even though he was a member of Gary Hart's, stable. And of course, Gary had the history with the great Kabuki, so there was the tie-in with is Muta Kabuki's son, or is Mookie Kabuti's son, or whatever the case. But they were eventually, and I thought this would be a good idea, they were going to turn Muta babyface because the kids loved him. There were still kids watching wrestling at that time. And he was so exciting. And he was different. But of course, at that point, Gary, I think, had convinced him, well, it'd kill you, brother, if they turn you heel or turn you babyface, because he didn't want to lose Muta. But, I think he got homesick, whatever the fuck. They beat him 4 times in one night or 3 times in one night at that round robin tournament at Starrcade 89. And
Future Shock.
Future Shock. He was shocked, all right. Because when they came up with that, and that Hurd was pushing that a lot because he thought it was sports oriented, which was fine. But as how are we going to figure these matches with 4 singles and 4 tags? Somebody's going to have to lose a lot in one night, and it was all of our top guys. And you should have seen trying to get the job out of the Road Warriors. And so they beat Muta 3 times because he was the only one that couldn't fucking argue in English. And, he got disenchanted and left shortly there afterwards, and there you go. But I did like Muta as a talent, and obviously he had a stellar and Hall of Fame career in Japan and was one of the most integral parts of Japanese wrestling for 20 years after that or whatever. And still, obviously, that they just had his retirement to this day. But, completely different talent as Muto as he was as Muta. And then he got the Muta gimmick over there, too, where he could switch and become Muta instead of Muto. And
well, Jim, on that topic, we can keep talking about this. I just want to say also on this show, once again, titled Great Muta Final Bye-Bye, at the Yokohama Arena, he challenged New Japan's Naito to be his opponent for the last match of Keiji Muto at the Tokyo Dome on February 21st. So that's the main event for the Tokyo Dome, February 21st.
Wait a minute, they're coming back and running the Tokyo Dome again 6 weeks after they just ran the Tokyo Dome?
They're running, let me just see what I can find here. Yeah, it is a joint New Japan, actually talent from New Japan, Noah, Dragon Gate, All Japan, Tokyo Joshi Pro, and DDT will all be a part of this show. So it's a joint venture, and it is trying to see if there's a name for it. The other one was Great Muta Final Bye Bye. There's no official name.
This one is Great Muta. Hello again. I was only lying.
Oh, this is Pro Wrestling Last Love.
Pro Wrestling Last Love.
Keiji Muto Grand Final Pro Wrestling Last Love.
Well, I hope he finds his long-lost last love and whatever else he's looking for in the way of happiness. But yeah, so he can have 2 retirements because he was 2 individual personalities.
You know what? He came back several times after 1990. Like, he would come back for like a pay-per-view and then he would disappear again. Even like into Nitro, he would show up. It was never the same. Like, there was just a moment there from 89 into early 90 when the fans started turning him babyface and then he was gone, where he was one of the most promising, one of the most special, one of the most intriguing wrestlers in the entire business. And I never felt that spark ever again. Whenever he would appear on WCW TV for a pay-per-view or whatever it may be, it was never there again for me.
Well, it's because you couldn't do that just coming in for a shot and then leaving again. It was the first time around, it was the shock of seeing him and how good he was and how fast he was and how he could move and etc. And that slowed down over the years too. But, you know, the first time, he was the only guy really that TBS had brought in, or that WCW had brought in under Turner, that hadn't been there before, that people really started talking about and was really getting over. Everybody else was, you know, left over from Crockett. They were over from that, but TBS wasn't getting any new names over at that time.
Other than drawing ability, completely other than drawing ability, he was WCW's 1982 Jimmy Snuka.
Yes.
He had the moonsault. People went crazy for it. The rest of the match, he couldn't take his eyes off the things he did. And then they started cheering for him, and we never got the babyface turn.
And of course, the lack of drawing ability is not his fault, because it was Turner Broadcasting, and they couldn't draw
no one
money
could draw.
if you dipped him in glue and drug him through Fort Knox, as I've said before. So he wasn't the Lone Ranger. Nobody else was drawing either.